maybe if everybody could go on mute, and I'd like to introduce Dwayne Thomas. And Dwayne, you could take it from here.
All right, fabulous. Thank you, Peter. And maybe let's double check that Orlando got the link, and also let's share that link again in the comments.
He's here. He's here.
Okay, he's here now. Okay, and maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, fabulous. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I think our numbers are pretty high, even above the usual meetup turnout rate. So thank you so much. Lovely to see everyone so enthusiastic about our event here and about supporting our Portland tech Black community and improving it in all of Portland at the same time by what we focus on. And so next slide, please, Peter. Yeah, I think folks got here, so I don't want to emphasize our social media too much. The only thing that was newer on that slide is our LinkedIn. You know, we have that going now for 2 weeks, so be sure to connect with us there. You've gotten here, so you've been using our meetup. Please register. As we try to obtain partners and sponsors, those numbers matter a lot to us. So yeah, please do connect and support us. Our Slack channel as well, we'll be sending links for those. We've been going on now for 2 years with Portland, and we provide mentoring, resume reviews, cover letters, mock interviews, job posts, a little bit of corporate consulting on diversity. And you know, we feel like we haven't been doing this long enough, to be honest. We're 2 years in, and you know, it's the topic of the day for as far as systemic racism and where it presents itself. You know, we see it just in a lot of lived experiences. As you know, it could be as simple as someone being at home, you know, in the case of Breonna Taylor and dealing with the police, but then also in our leisure experience, folks are now privy to videos online showing, you know, someone trying to go to a pool and that disrupted. We thought those days might be behind us, right? You know, so really in the professional world, anti-racism really hasn't taken root, so we're not there yet. We have some work to do, so we're providing those services. Thanks to everyone that's been volunteering who's here today. Next slide, Peter. Thank you. So we have Jordan Moss, Diane as our current volunteers in Portland. Peter is at Bit National there helping us out. We have some previous volunteers, Lee Sharp, Sherman George, and Luis Blanc. We wouldn't have gotten here today without them, so thank you so much. We have a fantastic panel, but I'm going to allow Diane to do those introductions in a little bit. We've had, next slide, a sponsor, Owen Jones, and we've connected with NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers, Partners in Diversity, Latinx Tech, PDX. You know, although there's a lot of current events, there is one particular outcome and research paper that also just came out, and is a current event for us here in Portland, where Partners in Diversity released a study of diversity retention, and it said that 74% of employees of color feel discrimination in their workplaces in Portland. You know, that's really touching and egregious, right? You know, we have moral responsibility and to get this right, and also be much more hospitable environments for everyone. I think if we knew that based on our work, you know, not on some personal bias, that we would be able to thrive in the workplace. So I'll link that as well to the Partners in Diversity study, and encouraging folks to check that out. Next slide. Yeah, so Bit National partners with Portland, and what we're after is to make sure that Blacks in technology, we use community and media to increase the representation and participation of Black women and men in the tech industry. And on a lighter note, Peter, you can explain the raffle for us that we want our participants. We appreciate your time coming here on a hot day in Portland at the least. I know this is national, appreciate everyone nationally. But Peter, we want to take it away and go over the raffle that we're offering folks?
I would love to. It's always fun to be the guy with the giveaway. So I like that part. Bring my toys with me. And so yes, it's hot in Portland. It's hot in Dallas also. So I just wanted to say hot is hot. Las Vegas in the house. It's hot there too, I'm sure. So a raffle. So door prizes, we often have door prize sponsors or your dues or your contributions and sponsor dollars we give back. So during this program, we're offering one lucky person, it's just one person, their choice of two different gifts. One is a Fit Track electronic body mass index scale, your weight and all those wonderful things about that donut you ate last night will show up on the screen, or I think it actually links to your phone. So we have that if you want to win that. And if you're not feeling that, it's two Bluetooth Tiki Tunes, really colorful speakers, Bluetooth speakers. So everybody could use some Bluetooth speakers, I'm sure. So the way this works, it's a raffle. And so everybody got their ticket at the door, right? Oh, okay, this is COVID times. No, so what it's gonna be is through the chat line, and you should be able to chat privately to me. And so it's a raffle of a number. So it's the person who comes closest to a number between 1 and 100 without going over. If you go over, your vote or your ticket doesn't count. So you have to be under. So you got to be closest without going over. And I do see a few people on here that are dues paying members. So they have the hookup. That's just the way it goes. We appreciate our members most. Everybody has the opportunity to become a dues paying member. They get 4 tickets. So when they walk to the door, we slip them a couple under the table. You know how that goes sometimes. And so they've got 4 tickets, and I know your names because I've got the registration list of who's a dues paying member, and you know who you are. So if you're a dues paying member, you get to put in 4 choices, 1 through, what did I say, 100? Yes, 1 through 100. And then everyone else can join. I can put the link in. So I've seen that happen. In one of these, somebody joined so they can get 4 tickets. So I'll put the link in the chat. And at the end of the presentation, we'll open, y'all don't look old enough, the hermetically sealed envelope from Johnny Carson's show that has the number. So we'll do that at the conclusion. So you were here on time. If somebody comes late, they won't hear the instructions. How about that? So those of y'all that heard this, send in 1 or 4 choices of a number, just a number from 1 to 100. Closest wins. If it's a tie, we will draw for the tie. Or if we're feeling really good, you'll both win. We'll figure that out. If 3 tie, we're going to do a drawing for sure. But that will be at the end of the presentation because we don't want to take away from the presentation. Back to you, Dwayne.
Right. So they're asking, where do they send, Peter? Can you repeat that part again?
Private chat to Peter Beasley.
Awesome.
I see all these privately chats, so some people have figured it out.
All right. Okay. Incredible. All right. And so next, Diane, please take it away. Diane's a volunteer now with Portland for a while, and yeah, she's kicking butt in her day job at Coinbase, and we're super excited that she'll facilitate our awesome panel. All right, go ahead, Diane. It's all you.
Thank you, Dwayne. I'm definitely happy to help this team get this event off the ground, and I'm really excited to hear the panels that we have, the panelists speak that we have today. Today's session is about new normals, right? And so when you think about what a new normal is, it's when a society settles into a different way of doing things following a crisis. So if you think back, 9/11 was a major crisis, the financial crisis of 2008, and that aftermath, 2008 through 2012. It goes without saying that 2020 has generated a new normal for us. So we have COVID-19 pandemic, and then we have the rebellions arising out of the racial injustice and killings of unarmed Black people, specifically George Floyd in Minnesota, Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, Breonna Taylor in Kentucky. I know you guys are all aware of those tragedies. And so the past 5 months really has significantly changed everything for a lot of us. So this is an important conversation that I think is well timed for us to really be a part of. And though we're not past it yet, we want to consider how are things different for Blacks in tech post-COVID, right? So we're a good ways in, but we're not fully past it. Is working from home a plus, a minus, something in between? Are there new economic uncertainty due to job loss? We know that it is for a lot of people, but how are they really affected by it? Are there building opportunities for us as a result of the change? Can we have some really great, strong businesses grow out of this time that we're facing right now? And so these are some of the reasons why we're here to have the conversation. And we have a dynamic panel that will shed some light and help us understand what this new normal is about and what we can do while we're here and as we transition into the next several years. So I will introduce our panelists, and I'll allow them a few minutes after reading their bio to share before we dive into the conversation. So I will start with Blaire Hervey, who is a badass business and career coach, culture influencer, motivational speaker, and sales enablement leader at Amazon Web Services. Blaire also serves as the corporate strategist on the visionary squad for PDX Women of Color. She's on the board of directors of the Metropolitan Family Services DEI Committee, the Junior League of Portland's DEI Strategy Committee, and the Racial Justice for BIPOC's Special Committee. Blaire also consults for the Vancouver NAACP. She crafts culturally specific messaging to prevent the spread of coronavirus in the Black community. Welcome, Blaire.
Hello, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great.
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I heard you say you were going to give us a couple minutes to share. Was there something specific you wanted me to share?
Well, just anything that you might have wanted to add in addition to what I've shared for your bio. If you don't, that's fair too.
Well, Diane, you did a wonderful job of introducing me, so I think we're good. But it's wonderful to be here.
Great. Thank you, Blaire. We also have Orlando Williams, who founded Motus Recruiting and Staffing in 2006. And in a short time, the company has grown to be one of the Pacific Northwest's largest and most respected staffing firms under his hands-on, high-integrity leadership. He attributes his success across a wide scope of careers to his personal approach of servant leadership. He's also a game analyst for the NBA Portland Trailblazers. Welcome, Orlando. You're muted.
I was wondering if I was going to be the first one to actually make that error, and it was me. I am honored to be here. I think this is very timely, obviously. The need is great, the discussion is appropriate, and a little bit about my passion in this space is I want to see Black people excel in technology. And as we get into our discussions this evening, understanding what excel means, what the definition looks like, and what the destination might look like. And because it does move regularly, whether that be intentional, that it's moved with intentionality, or it's moved because technology is actually happening and innovation is taking place. I'm excited to engage in the dialogue, and hopefully when we leave this afternoon or this evening, we'll have some solutions that we can point to.
Excellent. Thank you, Orlando. And our third and final panelist is Peter Beasley. Peter is a technologist, having led corporate technology infrastructures and teams for over 25 years in oil and gas, healthcare, government, and in financial services industries. He also founded and launched the CMDB software, a CMDB software company called NetWatch Solutions in 2003. Since March 2020, Peter is also the executive director of Blacks in Technology. He has a growing list of quotes in national publications. I'm sure we've read some of those over the years. Welcome, Peter.
Well, thank you, Diane, and welcome. We're happy to be here again for everybody. And the list of employers, it just means I had a hard time keeping a day job. So ultimately in 2003, I did start a software company, NetWatch Solutions. This is back in the day that nobody knew what a CMDB was, Configuration Management Database, if you're in the technology field. And this itty bitty little startup and this other little startup was called ServiceNow. We started at the same time. You all know them. You maybe are hearing about me for the first time, but that's the space that I'm in. And yeah, this post-COVID time, this is real gray hair. And my 100 years on the planet, okay, 150, however many I get, they happened at a good time. You know, my son and people graduating in 2020, they're not having a fun time, things like that. But I don't know. This is a great panel, a great conversation. How do you operate and move in this new era? Because it was a lot easier for me to shake hands, go to lunch, network, really see how people are looking at you funny from the side of their eye. You can't, everyone's looking at a camera now. So how do you operate post-COVID? So I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Diane. Happy to be part of the panel.
Great, thank you very much. I took out some pen and paper so I could write these nuggets down because, this is such an amazing panel, but I realize it's being recorded, so I'll be able to retweet the nuggets later on when I rewatch. For those of you who are Twitter fingers, feel free to retweet some nuggets when you hear it, right? Hashtag Blacks in Technology. One of the most notable thing though in this new normal is that we see a lot of folks of all ethnicities showing up in protests for Black lives during the pandemic. We love to see it, at least I do. But it really is unlike anything we've ever seen in this country as it relates to protesting. How do we, and any one of you panelists can start by answering this question, but how do we see the support for Black Lives Matter and Black lives translate to a support and representation of Black people in the tech space? Is there a connection? Should there even be a connection on that?
I can get started.
Great.
So what I've noticed is that the Black Lives Matter movement, in essence, for a lot of corporations has been an opportunity for them to market. And so with that in the front of our minds, it's a blessing and a curse, I would say. The blessing is that obviously it gives us an opportunity to amplify our voices, amplify our stories, and talk about our experiences like we've never shared them before. Because I don't know about you all, but it was very taboo to bring your outside experiences, particularly as it pertains to race, into work. So with that movement being essentially mainstream and in the front of everyone's mind and on the news and things of that nature, in essence, it gives us more permission to be ourselves in these corporate spaces. So I would say that's the blessing. The curse is, what I'm finding is, again, it's an opportunity for marketability. It's an opportunity for corporations to take advantage of that particular movement and to appropriate, or to say that or to become performative, right? And to, in essence, say that, they've been doing this all along. Of course, Black Lives Matter. Well, show us in the representation that's in leadership within your organization. Show us how you're advancing Black lives within your company. Show us that, you have a pipeline full of Black folks. I see over and over again, corporations just recycling us. It's either someone else, especially in the Portland area. If it's not, someone, that I know, it's someone else that they're tapping on the shoulder of. I'm like, there's so many other opportunities to find talent and build talent and advance talent. So I would say this is a great opportunity for corporations to truly, admit where they are and to truly start making some moves towards advancing Black lives within their organizations.
Oh, that is such a great response. Thank you very much. And as you were talking, I was thinking, Orlando, of your company and having that relationship with the companies that you're providing these employees to through your staffing efforts. How do you relate to what Blaire just shared as far as observing that in the space?
Yeah, I think Blaire appropriately described both the positive and the negative that could come. I am still yet waiting to see the full manifestation of what Black Lives Matter will manifest within the organizations. Right now, we're seeing a tremendous amount of rhetoric. There are individuals who seem to be repentant There's a level of awareness that certainly has come to fruition. However, we've seen awareness before in this country. We've seen repentance before in this country, but we've yet to see the manifestation of the action and the quantifiable results of those actions. So how they manifest in our organization, and we work with a number of large organizations throughout the state of Oregon and the Pacific Northwest, and also some smaller and medium-sized businesses. And here's what I have been at the table in the C-suite discussing. Many of these organizations say they want diversity and they want to hire Black technologists. They want individuals at the table, but yet they don't realize that their hiring practices are exclusionary. And I'll give you an example. There are times when you decide that you want to hire, and these companies will ask us for specific talent, and they want to hire that talent, but they say we need that talent within 48 hours. Or we need that talent within a week. Well, the realities of finding diverse talent, finding Black talent, and then making the assumption that these individuals are just going to be readily available to make a change and start a job tomorrow is unrealistic. And so if you're truly interested in hiring Black talent, if you're truly interested in moving the needle, then your practices must be reflected in your rhetoric. And so I see prohibitive aspects of hiring that are still happening. So I'm waiting for the results of Black Lives Matter to actually bring about substantive change in the protocols and policies of these organizations. And I think Blaire did a great job of describing what that looks like.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think, you know, it's what you both shared speaks a lot to that pipeline problem that a lot of companies tend to say is there, you know, for hiring Blacks in tech. You know, they're just not there. So we just can't find them. Peter, on a national level, can you speak to that, of how you've observed the hiring?
Absolutely. So found myself in this funny intersection, being executive director of Blacks in Technology, and we have a high search engine placement due to our founder for 10, 11 years, Greg Greenlee, posting and talking about the diversity challenges and problems. So we get found. Blacks in Technology is being found, and we have an inquiry line. And it's amazing to see exactly what our panelists are saying, that some are just giving it lip service, it seems, and then others are absolutely trying to make a difference. And some of them are completely saying, we want to do something, but I'll just be honest, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start. I want to start. And literally, we're finding people from Australia, from Switzerland, not even in America, trying to legitimately help. And even talking to the D&I inclusion folks at these large and mid-sized corporations, I can tell if they're really serious, because they're talking dates and amounts and what they can do in a certain amount of time. And then some of these large names that we buy products from and know, saying, well, we're just getting started, we're kicking the tires, we want to hear, and we're interviewing. I'm like, interviewing? This has been going on for a while. What do you mean you're just trying to figure out what to do? And as for seeing the change, I think all of us on this call can be part of that change. And I haven't quite figured out why. And whenever I talk to Dwayne and you all in Portland, you all are protesting every night. But on the news in Dallas, we don't see that anymore. It stopped. That stopped being top of mind, and it got out of the news, but the protests go on. And so another thing that I've tried to do in the media requests that we get, it's, yes, the pipeline, and we want to hire more, and even the media would say we want more Black voices in our publications. I want to blow some people up, not blow them up as in the Me Too, people started getting fired. We need people fired. We need brands hurt. We need companies shut down because they have racist, discriminatory practices. And I'm seeing the conversations slowly slip there. So we need to be much like the Me Too movement, in that people get fired, lose their jobs, they lose money because of their discriminatory practices.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. You know, back to something that you said, Blaire, about one of the blessings of this is that it allowed us to show up authentically more at work. So how do we find that this new normal of the work from home environment, how do you think that would affect Black employees? Because, you know, I'm thinking in some instances, you're in the office and so you're right there, but then you're at home and you're in this remote environment. So it kind of removes that, you know, immediate, seeing you immediately. How do you feel that the work from home environment has affected Black employees, microaggressions, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, microaggressions is something that we have long dealt with, right? And we've coped with in a plethora of different ways. Oftentimes we show up and we're code switching to try to fit in. But I'm a firm believer, I've always been a firm believer of authenticity. And as you continue to be authentic, you give other people permission to be themselves as well. And so, you know, from working from home, I mean, sometimes I'll not want to be on video because I have my little Bantu knots because, you know, I got to get my hair together, right? I said, forget that. You know, they're going to see me in my little glasses. They're going to see me in these Bantu knots, and I have information to give, and I'm going to contribute. But I'm also going to be prepared. So I think a big part of, you know, this opportunity is making sure that we choose not to fall back. We choose not to dim our light. We choose to be on camera. We choose to contribute to that conversation. And when we do feel microaggressed, we feel courageous enough to advocate for ourselves. And when we don't feel confident or courageous enough to do that, then we start talking to our peers and we become allies of one another. Like this is not the time to be competing with Orlando or to be competing with Peter or anybody else for these roles. It's the time for us to come together and say, hey, Orlando, hey, Peter, or vice versa. Y'all should be asking me too. How did you get there, right? Or what should I do? This is the situation that I've been in. How can I show up, you know, much more confident? How can I show up the way that I intend to show up? And listen, because oftentimes as Black folks, you know, we don't like to be criticized. We don't want to criticize each other, but we have to take that in and say, okay, this is a great opportunity for me to show up in my fullness and get what is due to me. And I think that's something that we have to remember. We're not tokens, we are chosen. So remember, you've been put in this space for a reason.
Indeed, thank you for that.
Problem.
I will be tweeting a little bit later. So either of you, Orlando, Peter, you know, I still wonder, does the out of sight, out of mind affect Black employees in this new normal? You're not in the office, so they're not seeing you every day. They're seeing the work that you do. You know, Blaire says, I have something to say, I have something to contribute, so I'm showing up regardless of how you're seeing me. In what situations do you think that may affect Black employees?
Well,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Orlando.
Well, there's a contrast that I'd like to highlight in that question, and as Blaire was describing showing up and what that looks like, I couldn't help but to think that the contrast that we often think about when we're going to a workplace, when we're going into an environment, a culture, where the essence of who you are oftentimes is on full display. And if we're candid about the authenticity that comes from Black exceptionalism, and that is on display, and you're able to provide that aura, that essence of who you are. If you're in a remote environment and you don't get an opportunity to demonstrate that, then you must then be excellent in your delivery, must be excellent in the things that you provide, must be excellent in your work product, because now many of the things that we've asked for as far as being evaluated based on our skills and abilities now, if you're not readily available to provide that essence, which is a good thing. I mean, we want to be able to, I'm demonstrative. If I'm on camera, I like to bring energy. I like to bring myself, the way I speak, the presence. I believe in that. I believe in that fully. But if I'm not able to provide that, if I am 100% remote, if I'm not able to show my smile, if I think my smile is a winning smile, or if I can't do that, then I better be able to deliver something that's going to be substantive. I better be able to deliver something that is going to add value. And as Blaire was describing that, I felt like that's what we're seeing now. Now, it has its connotations that are negative as well. And I'm sure we'll get there. I won't take all the air on this question, but I will say that there has to be an element of realization that says, I don't get to bring my exceptionalism, my aura, my essence. So I must bring the best of my skills and ability to that equation. And then maybe we also get an opportunity to level the playing field because we're providing a level of exceptionalism that has not yet been realized because we've been compared and contrasted with our peers, and their essence, in essence, based on a person's predisposed ideologies, overrides ours, not because we aren't exceptional, but because they're predisposed to only see a certain type of exceptionalism.
Absolutely.
So Diane, sorry, I would jump in. I wish I had Owen, Orlando, and Blaire with me all the time when I'm walking in my operations and dealing with people, because they said it so eloquently that I can never do or could not do in my career. And so another strategy that probably would work for me, I'm a little further down the road. I own a software company, and I'm not really dealing with as many challenges as you all might be in your corporate life. But on the technical ladder, some of these challenges might be easier to overcome if you're churning out more code, or you're standing up more servers, or you're solving more technical problems, because I don't see an easy path for the managerial ladder where you have so much influence and networking and who's supporting you and advocating your position from your peers. That seems to be is harder for everyone, and meaning so for us more so. And so it might be a time to pivot and go back to the technical ladder, or stay on the technical ladder, or get your side hustle on. Go build an app, go build a system, go write a book, go get your own intellectual property, because the new normal of smoozing or getting someone to help you, a mentor, that just seems harder through these little boxes. Let me see who's gonna, Ian, you gonna mentor me? I don't even know Ian, he doesn't know me. I think that's kind of hard to find a mentor on a Zoom screen. I don't know. Excuse me. That's what I have to say.
Well, Peter, we got to talk about that afterwards. We'll talk. I'll show you how. I know
Blaire,
you.
Okay.
We'll
no,
talk.
I want you. I want you.
Hey, you better be careful with that. Move on.
You know what's interesting? I actually wanted to ask about what the wealth gap, and you kind of led into that somewhat as far as talking about starting our own businesses and things like that. How do you think this new normal will help blacks in tech, or blacks in general, move into that space and reduce that wealth gap?
I'll go first since I was last, but I went last. Yeah, I think this is the time that innovative people become innovative. And so I've always said blacks in technology is synonymous for innovation in technology. If you were enslaved and oppressed and came here and got a degree and got into tech and did all the things that we all on this panel, on this presentation have done, you have to be smart, you have to be shrewd, you have to be savvy. And so we solve problems differently. And that's why we want to be hired, or people want to hire us. And so this is the time to go and innovate and double down on yourself. And so yeah, I think we will see, a year from now, 2 years from now, all of those incubated dreams that come to harvest, because this might be the time to do that. Blaire, I'm sorry, go ahead. You were going to go next.
Sure, why not? So I agree. I believe that this is definitely the time to learn some new skills, do some new things. I'm one of those people that's on Instagram like, yes, like 2020 ain't canceled. So by the way, 2020 ain't canceled. This is still an opportunity for you to take advantage of this time at home, for you to take advantage of the fact that you don't have, maybe not someone looking over your shoulder, but you don't have to be completely focused on the things that you were focused on before. So to Peter's point, like, this is the time for us to think about how do we build generational wealth? How do we start learning things that we can pass on to our children? How do we create these skill sets that will be beneficial for us, just in case, the job does not serve us any longer, or vice versa? So I know during this time, a lot of people want to relax, rest, and I agree. I also agree that this is also the time to move forward with your goals and start thinking outside of the box, and build a business during this pandemic. I'm a firm believer of that. We've had so many opportunities where wealth has been stripped from us, taken from us, anywhere from Black Wall Street to Sweet Auburn Avenue, which is my favorite in Atlanta, Georgia. This is the opportunity for us to rebuild and for us to buy Black and build from, and go ahead and have an opportunity to build with one another.
Yes. I'm so sorry, I didn't hear the last part of what you're saying. It seems as if we have some sound coming from JVM. There we go. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry, Blaire. Missed that last sentence or two.
Yeah, so the last thing that I was saying, we just, Black people have a history in America of not only being behind when it comes to building wealth, but once we have the opportunity to build wealth. And I was speaking of like Black Wall Street in Tulsa. I was speaking of Sweet Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, Georgia, where, you know, Jim Crow forced us into specific areas. So we had no other, you know, choice but to support and buy from one another. But we had so many other advantages. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to start thinking about how can we recreate those moments within our own communities. So I'm a firm believer of that for sure.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And, you know, there's that saying that when America catches a cold, in an economic sense, Black America catches the flu, right? And so, you know, with adding to what you said, we really should be thinking of what can we do to limit the effects of the flu in our communities during times like this. You know, with the increase in the support, because everyone, and it could be our rhetoric because we've been seeing that, but a lot of people are buying from Black businesses and, you know, just supporting everything Black verbally right now. And I think slowly we're seeing the money come. You might have heard of mybblackreceipts.com during last month, where they set the goal of $5 million of spending on Black businesses from Juneteenth through July 6th. And before the last day of the process, the goal was blown open to over $7 million. Right, so there's significant support for Black businesses right now. So adding to what you said, I definitely think that that's definitely one way that we can do that. Orlando, do you have anything to add to, you know, what can happen to Blacks in recessions, and how can this time be any different for us?
Yeah, this is an area of passion for me, and I've often referred to this in private conversation as the final frontier for Blacks when it comes to economic advancement and development in this country. And the reason why I refer to it as the final economic growth and development, closing the wealth gap as the final frontier, is because historically speaking, when we talk about the Reconstruction era of the late 1800s, where we saw great authorship from individuals like W.E.B. Du Bois, who wrote about the Black Reconstruction, where we were not able to take advantage of the growth and the land grants that were happening in this country. And so we were put at a disadvantage through government policy. And then we saw the civil rights movements through the 60s, starting in 57 and through the 60s. And there are many that today historians would say that legislation, that work did not go far enough. And when we got to the point where the discussion was about economics, we saw the demise of our actual exceptional leaders. So now we find ourselves here in 2020, where we have a choice, we have an opportunity, and I'm always willing to participate in the discussion on how we continue to be more productive while working at organizations and these companies that are building and innovating. When you talk about artificial intelligence in healthcare, and you talk about smart grid technology in energy, and you talk about security and growth in financial services and banking, those are all things that we certainly want to participate in. But when I see statistics, and I saw a graph and a chart just a few days ago, that productivity for technology has increased exponentially during COVID. And if productivity has increased so exponentially, that means that as Blaire indicated, and as Peter talked about, that means that individuals are finding more time in their day to be productive for the companies that they're working for. I'm always a proponent, as it sounds like Peter and Blaire are, to actually use maybe some of that lack of commute time that's necessary, the ability to work later in the evening. Use that time to actually build your skills. Use that time to actually start a business, even if it's something that you don't think may be a multi-billion-dollar organization. It's still worthwhile because you're teaching yourself how to actually fish. And I think that's a really good and really important point. The gap is still right now, Blacks are still earning only a fraction of their white counterparts. And the wealth gap in the new normal is only going to increase as certain lower level positions get eliminated by technology and we continue to grow and expand and these companies become more innovative. That wealth gap is going to increase if we aren't more entrepreneurial in the way we work and think.
And to that very point, we have to consider what are the tech careers in our communities, because you have those low-level jobs that are being moved out. How do we get Blacks more involved in learning, more learning and development for Blacks and Black and brown people to open up these opportunities, in tech? Anyone of you can jump in on that.
Well, I was going to say just really quickly, one of the things that I think has to happen is that while we're looking at ways to find funding for different programs, one of those has to be education. It has to be career development. It has to be advancement. Those are some of the key things. We have to think about things that have a longer life cycle. And training and development has a very long life cycle. It basically can be said in short is investing in yourself. And if we're looking for ways to find investments for the Black community, one of those investments must be continued education and a continued skill development.
Excellent point.
So, Diane, to a degree, if normally the majority organizations are 7 steps ahead because of wealth, who they know, position, power, and on, all the disadvantages or advantages, depending on how you look at it, that exist. They're just really there. Right. But right now, this COVID flattened the curve for a lot of things, and those companies that were 7 steps ahead are maybe only 3 now because they're struggling. They're trying to figure out. So we can compete faster. I kind of look at me and my little lowly journey as a co-organizer in Dallas with Blacks in Technology. I was just a co and started showing up and participating. Then pretty soon I reached out to Greg and he allowed me to help nationally. And I got involved nationally, and then this moment happened and we are about to be international. And so all of a sudden I'm executive director of something international that when the opportunity showed up, seems like, I might be able to do this. I might be able to find the time because everything else slowed down. So to a degree, a lot of the world has slowed down. Everyone's trying to figure it out. So that's a secret advantage for you and us that capitalize on that extra time, learn, study. As Blaire said, nobody's looking at your shoulder. So you can have this monitor on your stuff and that monitor on their stuff, so you can do that during this time.
And Diane, do you mind if I add something to that as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so having a L&D, a learning and development background, and being in sales enablement, specifically for AWS currently, I'm a firm believer of continued education as well, much like Orlando said, much like Peter said as well. I think what we have to remember is that it can be unconventional. Time investment is what's really important. So I am also a firm believer of making 100K without a degree, +++, 100 +++, without a degree. And that's not to minimize the value of formal education, but that's also just to remind us that something that's really important is, the book that Angela Duckworth has made famous, Grit, right? Passion and perseverance. Mm-hmm. And what we have to remember that it's within us and you don't have to wait. So yes, get some of that education and apply it right away. Get some of that education and come to the table with that excellence, like Orlando said. Get some of that education and then apply it and build something, like Peter said. So don't let it go to waste. Don't wait for someone to tap you on the shoulder. You don't need anyone to give you permission, but read a book, learn. And Peter, it's funny that you said how you started this chapter and then it blossomed into something new and something different. That's another part of education, is tapping into these networks where there's an opportunity to meet other people, where there's an opportunity to do a virtual coffee, ask questions, and just become better and get better. Just wanted to add that.
An excellent point.
No problem.
That book, Grit, Angela Duckworth, that is one of the best books that I've read in recent years. So I definitely recommend to anyone who hasn't read it yet. It's a really great read. And so one thought that I had as we were talking, if you have any insight into where the tech careers are now, I imagine everyone on the call is involved in tech in some way, shape, or form. But if you have, do you have any insight on what the careers are that our members and anyone else that they know who are interested in getting into the space? Can you speak to where they can look to find those opportunities?
One of the things that I would encourage, and as you look at the landscape of what's happening, certainly user experience work is becoming more popular. If you consider the fact that remote work and individuals are shopping more online, and some of the tools that are being utilized, the UI UX space, whether it's on the more technical or the more design side, is definitely an area. Artificial intelligence, as I alluded to before, kind of dropping the healthcare line because of the way that individuals are communicating with physicians, and data mining, all of the data careers where information is being gathered, it's being analyzed, and it's being utilized to help organizations operate more efficiently and more effectively, would be great. And then finally, and I know Peter can speak to this when you talk about with your financial services background as well, finance, financial services, banking, when it comes to security, how online banking is becoming more popular. So those would be my thoughts, and at least immediately that come to mind, areas that are continuing to grow and that we continue to get requests for regularly.
Yes, I'd jump in and add, thanks Orlando, that there's the odd or unknown parts of tech that exist, such as technical writing. And so we are actually working with a very large international cell phone computer company that has a fruit for a name. I'll leave it like that. And technical writing. So there was a guy who was a journalist and an English major who had this idea that he didn't know that he could get in tech. And there's multiple types of writing. There's product writing, there's business analyst writing, there's product marketing writing. So there's a whole skill set in tech that came from people that were teachers and writers and journalists and people who can just write. And so I would say, a shameless plug, attend organizations like this, join Blacks in Technology, and hear from the people in the breakout rooms, because a lot of it still depends on you. Just because people are hiring in cybersecurity doesn't mean you can do cybersecurity or you even like it. Can you spell it? I don't know if I can spell it. So that's not something I want to do. And so it still has to fit you. So you have to listen, match your skills, and then get that lateral in. So Blaire, were you going to say something?
Absolutely. So I would agree with you. It's definitely about matching your skills. It's also about matching just the core of who you are. So what are you good at? What do you believe in? So shameless plug for my industry specifically, or my occupation rather, sales enablement, learning and development. I love those particular roles mainly because you have an opportunity to tell somebody what to do. But no, you tell someone based on your experience, and you have an opportunity to develop others. So you have this path into tech, and it may be unconventional, especially if you had a sales background. That's a great way to get into training and sales enablement, learning and development, and still make the money in the tech space. And then again, of course, shameless plug, I support two specific segments, gaming and digital native businesses. And so those are organizations or companies that were built on the internet. They don't have a brick and mortar. They probably don't have any plans to have a building. So those are two segments that are, growing tremendously, much like Orlando said, due to everyone being at home. E-commerce is buzzing, but people are obviously gaming more. They're doing different things online. So it's a great segment to be a part of as well.
Great, thank you very much. Being mindful of the time, I want to stick into the frame that we have. I have one last question, but I want to remind attendees, if you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat, or you can raise your hand. I think there's a button for that. Jordan will take us through the Q&A once we're wrapped up with the panel discussion. But if you want to start dropping your questions in the chat, then that would save a little bit of time a little bit later. But the final thing I think, I mean, I had a couple of other questions, but the final thing I think I want to lead with is, following up to what we've been talking about as far as, matching the skills and finding the things that fit you. Some companies provide a learning and development as a budget as a benefit to employees, but not all companies do. Do you have any advice that we can give our audience on how to advocate to get that from the company? It's fine, of course, investing in yourself so you'll use your own money, but if you can get it from your company that you work for, let's try. Do you have any advice on how they can take some steps towards getting some L&D budget?
Absolutely. So, well, it's just speaking up and having a better idea of what the business objectives are for the department and for the organization are both helpful, because then you can work backwards from that. And then you can talk about how you can contribute to that particular number or that metric based on the investment in your education. So that's definitely one. I'm always thinking about different ways to create some type of proposal so that it makes sense, not only for me, but it makes sense for the organization. So I think that's one. I think that's actually the main thing that I would say, even if it's something for your department, whether it's something that's internal, if you're starting from those business objectives and what's most important to the company, it's really easy. It's easier to get that budget. What would you two add to that? Or would anyone?
Yeah, I can add that, those dollars when I was in corporate and I managed teams of people, and I mean, the training budget, man, that was the jewel. I could give it to who I wanted to, and they really liked me, and I could not give it to who I didn't want to, too. So I'm just being blunt about it. So how do you get on that list of getting the training dollars and getting education? And so, being innovative and clever and nice, sweet, I don't know about that, but, persistent. So, you need the referee to give you that call. By the end of the game, they got to call that guy's lining up offsides. Every play he's offsides. So you just got to keep getting in his ear. He's lining up offsides. He's offsides. And eventually you might get that call. So be mindful in your approach, humor, just make it where when we think about training, your name is top of mind. So I think a little bit is on us to make sure, speak up. Blaire said, ask. That's absolutely one of the things you need to do. Orlando, were you going to add to it?
Well, I have to say that I love those two answers. It is absolutely impactful to have both of those things, and I love them so much to say that I would bundle them and present them as a way of saying, the first question is, would you invest in you? When you're working at an organization, look at yourself and take that assessment and decide, would you invest in training dollars in yourself? And that would speak to what Peter is referring to. Are you kind? Are you likable? Are you the kind of individual that an organization can get behind? The other is understanding the key initiatives, as Blaire said, within an organization. What are they looking to do? Where are the problems with the organization? What are they looking to hire? Because they're hiring for skill gaps. And then asking them to invest in you. But the ask has two tenets. The first portion of the ask has to be presented in an ROI fashion. What is the return on the investment that you expect to give back to that organization? And what kind of commitment are you willing to make as a result of that? The second is what I would say is the DE&I term, which is sponsorship. So we talk about mentorship, we talk about sponsorship. Sponsorship oftentimes has dollars, it has commitment from management and leadership. So I wouldn't say that might be even a question that you go to your DE&I leader within your organization and talk about. Just talk about sponsorship and talk about the fact that you want to grow your career and you want to do it at the organization that you're at. That's an excellent reason to have that conversation with that individual, and hopefully that leads you to the success. But those two answers were perfect, and hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. So I'm imagining that in a couple of weeks, we'll get some emails from attendees who said they've gotten $1,500 for L&D to use before the end of the year. I hope so, at least. Um, Thank you very, very much for sharing your thoughts and your suggestions during this discussion. We want to move into the Q&A for any questions that our audience would have. And I'll have Jordan take it from here.
If I was on mute. Well, I'll start by asking my own question, and then if anybody wants to, either directly message me with a question or just put a question in the chat, then I can facilitate those questions as we go. My first question, we spoke about it earlier, as far as we mentioned mentorship, as far as networking goes, I know that's tougher to do now that everybody's remote. Would you give any advice to anybody who's new to a city? I talked to a lot of people who may be new to Portland, not the most diverse city in the country, to say the least. So it may be a little hard to find that community, especially when you're new to a city. Any advice besides webinars like this, for people who are new to a city in tech and looking to kind of build that network?
Absolutely. So shout out to PDX Women of Color, right? So I'm on the visionary squad, whoop, whoop, for PDX Women of Color, where we create meaningful experiences for the self-expression of Black and Brown women. So of course, I would suggest networking groups, also like Black Portland. So hopping in those groups, then you have access to other networks as well. Something that I did. So I was born in Dallas, Texas, raised in Louisville, Kentucky, launched my career in Atlanta, Georgia. So I've been here for the past 2 years. And those were the first 2 things that I did. But I also joined a couple of organizations like the Junior League of Portland. That was a way to start networking. And that was an opportunity for me to start taking my skill set, my corporate skill set, and applying it in a place where I could kind of practice. And so again, when we're talking about learning and training and all of those things, you have an opportunity to practice that skill set in a safe space and you can take it back to work. But anyway, networking groups. The other thing that I would say is on LinkedIn. So after a networking opportunity like this, so if you haven't already, you should reach out to at least 3 people from a call like this on LinkedIn, and you should have your ask ready. So what usually happens is people reach out to me, which is great. I'm that person that loves to hear the sales pitch or will make time for anyone, like 30 minutes only on Wednesdays, but I will make time for them. But the person that comes with, hey, I had a question about mentorship. I had a specific question about sponsorship, and I only want to take 30 minutes of your time. Then that's the person that I will continue to give my time to. So know what your ask is. Well, actually, first, join a networking group, join clubs, and have a specific ask when you're networking with people on LinkedIn. Those would be my 3.
I would agree. I think as Blaire describes, those are absolutely key points. I'm a proponent of crafting out the plan of what it looks like when you get to a new city. Maybe being your own architect, kind of going back to that self-investment, being your own architect and then commit to that architecture. So if you're going to build a house, you start with a solid foundation. In new cities, joining organizations are foundational. Participating in boards are foundational. Making sure that you are making those LinkedIn requests, those are foundational. But then the key is the work that happens after that, which is being consistent in those efforts. If you build a relationship, maintain it. If that means that you just have to follow up once a month, send a message, how you doing, those are key things that are going to help establish you in a new city. And then they're also going to help you flourish and grow. But you don't want it 6 months, 12 months to go by before you reach out to a person because you see something happening. You want to actually be on the front end of that information dissemination.
Diane, I thought I was at a disadvantage from Blaire and Orlando because I'm not in Portland. And then I just thought about that diversity and that disadvantage that's an advantage is just because you're in Portland doesn't mean you can't work in New York or Dallas or globally. So keep your networks and options open apart from your community where you work because COVID has somewhat globalized things, or certainly, we all are accustomed to Zoom and Google Meets and all the other networking platforms or conferencing platforms. So you can expand your opportunities just beyond where you live.
All awesome answers. Anybody else have any questions? I thought I'd have some more coming in, but I think you all three did such a good job asking questions that we don't have any. Let's see here. As an engineering hiring manager in a small to medium-sized tech company, what are some actionable things I can do to get the ball rolling on the D&I front here in Portland? I don't know who wants to take that. There you go.
I'll be happy to. And again, this applies, to any company, just about anywhere. But some of these groups that we've mentioned, and I apologize, I'm not sure who answered or asked that question. You should be at these networking events. So it's great that you're here. So that's wonderful. But you should also go to these other networking events, and you should be networking. So it's all about building your brand as well. People should know what you're about. So if you're representing this organization and DEI and B, which is belonging, is important to you, you should always be talking about it. You should be a thought leader on LinkedIn. You should be talking about it on your Facebook. And that way, some of those things will start coming to you. So that's one. So if you're really about it, be about it. So that's definitely one. And then when you're talking about beyond building your pipeline within an organization, you have to talk to your leaders. You have to make sure all of your leaders are on the same page. And I hate, talking about the age-old, unconscious bias training, but that's important because bias is something that's number one in these organizations when it comes to hiring. And what happens is they continue to keep the bar where the bar is, and the bar is centered in whiteness, and it's centered in a male predominant, space, especially in the tech space. So you should have conversations about reimagining what that bar is. And then you should retrain your managers on how to interview so that they can start removing that bias. And because what folks will typically say is, well, it takes too long to, fill the pipeline with, diverse candidates because y'all ain't doing the work. So you have to start doing the work, and then you start filling up that pipeline, and you have to stop quickly hiring someone that looks just like, John, someone that went to the school that, Shirley went to. You have to start digging deep, and grit is one of those things that you all should start paying more attention to as well. So those are very high level, but I'd be happy to talk more about those things later.
Jordan, this is a little across the line because it's another shameless plug for all of us in this organization, but sponsorships too. Be about it, but also put your money where your mouth is. Not just about we want to hire more people, then some kind of way don't get too many hired. But one way to actually differentiate yourself and show that you do want to bring people into your company is to sponsor organizations. Blaire's put a long list of organizations in the chat, as others have too, and we are one of those too, that you can actually have a panel like this centered around your company and the technology that you offer. You will distinguish yourself a lot better than just a job posting by actually participating in organizations like this and having events that you sponsored.
Jordan, I'm going to be really direct with this because I think what Blaire and Peter said is exactly accurate. So I'm just going to add this piece to it. The individuals, I'm always surprised when I sit down with organizations across the state of Oregon, and Oregon is unique. I won't go into that detail. If you're here, you know what I'm talking about. But I'm always surprised at the individuals who say they want diversity, who want equity, and they want inclusion, they want to hire Black people, but they participate in zero of the networking opportunities like this. The reality is that none of them are here, and I could call out names, I won't, but I could call out names that they are not present. And so if I'm sitting across the table from you and you're telling me you want to hire, but yet this has been well publicized, if I can just say that. Blacks in Tech, it's been well publicized throughout the city. Many of us have posted it. It got a lot of likes, lots of individuals engaged. And some of those individuals who said that they want to do this work are not present. This is the work that Blaire and Peter are talking about. They're not here. It becomes very apparent that there is a dichotomy, there's a duplicity in the speech and the action, and I see it constantly. So I just want to echo what they've already said, and to be very direct, I also pay attention not only with who is attending, but who isn't.
Awesome.
Let me just add one last thing, just one last thing. So when companies are talking about DEI DEI, right? They're talking about adding more, Black people oftentimes, or more women, whatever the case may be. But what they're not doing is priming the soil. So belonging is a piece that is always left out. So you may bring in more Black folks, you may bring in more women, you may bring in more differently abled folks, or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, if we don't feel like we belong, then you have a retainment issue. So that's something that I would highly recommend that organizations focus on, is how can we make sure that people of color, Black people, women, whomever it may be, that's different from the most of our organization, how do we make sure make them feel like they belong and that they should stay here?
Yeah, I've sensed, I've heard a theme in the last few questions of almost like follow through. We talk about, how what we can do as Black professionals as far as, training and development and professional development, and making sure, we're networking, we're following through on that. But then also holding these companies to a standard of following through on what they say they're going to do, and not using us as marketing tools or just checking a box, So I think it's holding us to a standard, but also obviously holding these companies to a standard when they post things and tweet things that they don't necessarily follow through on the back end. All good stuff. Well, anybody else have any questions before we get to the wrapping up phase here?
It looked like Susie had a question.
So I posted a question in, and it's tied to the belonging, but the 74% who feel disconnected, I think Dwayne referred to that in the opening. That's a crazy high number, right? It's way higher than it should be. And I'd love to bring more visibility and drive some conversations within my networks around that. But there's effective ways of doing it, and there's ineffective ways of doing it. I'd love to tap into this knowledge base to get some insights as to thoughts on how to drive that conversation.
So I would say, as far as corporately, you can definitely start with an engagement survey, something as simple as an anonymous employee engagement survey. And you can get the pulse of how folks are feeling, and whether or not they feel included, whether or not they feel like they belong, things of that nature. And then from there, you can take that data and start creating focus groups and having these real conversations. And I would leverage management to do that. But before you leverage management to do that, of course, you have to train them first, back to the training piece. But you definitely have to train them so that they're equipped to have these conversations within these focus groups. And then once you get this data from these focus groups, then you start tackling the issues that are being shared. So it is a lot of work. It's well worth it. And people will feel like you care when you truly ask them, you listen to them, and then you do something about it.
Yeah,
Peter?
if I might.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, if I might, since my name was brought up, Susie. I'll say if you post on LinkedIn, I got more views for this event from allies that posted and comments than I did posting myself for Blacks in Tech Portland. So, allies have an important voice in this, right? We wouldn't ask anyone else to bring about 30% improvement in a company performance on their own, right? That's what diversity does for us, right? So allies have a big role to play in this discussion. I mean, wherever you can mention it, yeah, please go ahead and do so.
One of the things that what I would say also, Susie, is when you get to the place that Blaire is describing and you begin to understand that information, some of the most meaningful progress that has happened within organizations here locally in Portland has been those initiatives where they've been handed to diverse leadership, and they've been given the budget and the control of those projects so that they don't have to deal with the trauma of being undermined by other individuals within the organization. And I can't emphasize that enough, because I don't know, there are so many Black leaders who are in organizations who have a almost tokenized presence, and they get traumatized because anytime that there's a key initiative that wants to be moved forward, it gets undermined and their authority is taken away, whether it be in a meeting or whether it be in the deliverable. So I would say providing meaningful opportunities to lead key initiatives and let those individuals drive those to success. Because I'm at the point where I will not personally, and I know we haven't had personal testimonials at this point, but I will not place individuals in organizations that have not yet done the work, because the trauma is too great. These individuals will not stay. And so when you talk about that number that Partners in Diversity realized, and when Blaire is talking about belonging, I mean, that's a great statistic, but if you think about the depth of what she's saying when she's saying belonging, it has so many connotations that are so deeply held and so deeply impactful for these individuals that organizations must, and I mean must, embrace allowing these individuals to do what you brought them there to do. Otherwise, they can't stay, because it becomes a physiological traumatic experience, and they're required health-wise to actually leave. And that's why the number's so high.
Awesome. Yeah, I would just to add to that quickly. I think hiring managers would be surprised how many times recruiters and staffing managers get questions about certain companies and their diversity and how inclusionary they are. I don't think hiring managers realize how important that is, especially moving forward now. And if they don't do something about that, they're missing out. They're not going to have as many candidates to pull from in the first place, because no one's going to be interested. So no, I think that's yeah. I didn't see any other questions. I know we have some time at the end here to network if anybody wants to stay on.
Yes.
I had a question. Oh, go ahead. I had a question too after your.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering, what are some companies that are good at inclusion? I know I've heard Intuit is one. I've heard Microsoft, but what are some other companies? One of the things that I've learned over 25 plus years is that, it's a lot of it has to do with working for the right company and the right culture. So I think it's a good idea to know where those companies are.
Yeah, anybody want to take this? Orlando, this might be a Orlando question.
Yeah, there's a couple. I have to be careful. And the reason why I say that is because I see so much duplicity, because I work heavily in the C-suite. So the challenge that I face is I see the rhetoric, or I hear the rhetoric, and I see the mission, but there's a delta between what is being said. So the companies that you might think are doing the work might have a different profile when you're actually there. Some companies that I know, that I've talked to individuals, and they are clear on their objective. One of them is NWEA here in Portland. I think they have some leadership in that organization that is adamant about moving the needle. I've seen some parts of Kaiser Permanente that have done a very good job with how they have implemented their mentor program. They've also promoted some key individuals. I look at how they promote and where they put individuals. I've seen some positive things there. And I'm going to stop there, because some of the other companies that I work with, yeah, I'll just stop there.
Hey, Peter, this is Brett Ashton. If you can, I apologies for the lighting. So I've been here in Silicon Valley for 30 years. And while part of me would want to echo in on names of companies, and there are some lists, there are definitely some ways that you can triangulate. I think somewhat to what Orlando was saying, look for companies that put their money or their resources where their mouth is. So who is spending money at organizations like NSBE, or is recruiting and those things? But,
I think Kelly, oh, there you go.
I don't think I have background noise. I don't think that's me. I mean, ultimately, you have to figure out who's really doing the work, and that is a lot harder. So you have to, when you go to things like this, make note of who shows up and what companies send real, maybe not C-suite, but send real people and not token people. And I'm not saying it's 100%, because you could end up in a bad area of a good company, but it's more about reading between the lines, and quite frankly, it's using networks like this to get inside and have a conversation with somebody that could give you the real deal, right? So I may think I know Microsoft pretty well. I wouldn't necessarily go to that final stage without having a conversation either with somebody that I know well or somebody that was referred to me by somebody else that, you know, that I know well. I mean, I will tell you, with most of my experience being very, very heavily slated towards big companies, I was at HP for 18 years, that it's really hard to make kind of one value judgment, you know, of a company of that size. So you really have to not only understand what is the company doing, but how can I figure out the culture, you know, in this business? I mean, I'll just make up an example and you guys can correct me. I mean, obviously, you know, yes, Amazon has a very big overall 30,000 foot culture, but I would think that some of that culture manifests differently in AWS versus warehouse operations, just how fundamentally different, you know, they are. And another example, I mean, Google is so big that it's very fundamentally different based on what business you're in, whether it was an acquisition. So it's a lot about reading between the lines to figure out, oh, you know, this person looks like, you know, they have a real job and they're doing real stuff, as opposed to, and I don't want to make a stereotype, sort of a token diversity and, you know, inclusion person. And then the last thing I'll say is, I have found smaller companies are more out front with people that are very visible, that are actually doing the work. I'll add in one last thing. You know, one good way to check the receipts, either on a company or somebody that works for a company, is check their social media posts. So you can see somebody that's in a panel at a conference, and you can see what they're, you know, what they're amplifying on Twitter. I'm a big fan of Twitter. You know, LinkedIn would work as well. And generally, you know, and I'm not saying this from a negative perspective, but you can say, oh, this is the conversation that this person, I'm thinking of a company of somebody that I met, you know, at a conference, that's just a phenomenal, you know, ally or advocate, whatever word you want to use. So you can usually see that by how other people talk about them, or how, you know, what voices they amplify. And that gives you a sense of, okay, it still's not going to be easy, but do I have a higher possibility of being in an organization that will provide some level of support for me? Thank you.
Hey, Dana, this is Johnny. So just to kind of speak on Microsoft, I am a Microsoft employee, and I've been there for some time, and they've always been a big diversion and inclusion company, and even more lately there. And just me personally, like I say, I'm really proud of the fact that, you know, we had some Black women in very high positions at the company there. And not just that, like I say, it's not just diversity, but also, you know, inclusion with women and stuff. And they're, like I say, making conscious efforts, even now with the whole Black Lives movement going on. CTO Satya is making a conscious effort to, it's like, hey, we need to do more. What can we do more? And they're, you know, they're asking employees, hey, what can we do more? So, you know, we're not perfect, you know, still got a ways to go. But definitely, if you have any questions about the company, I'll love to answer them for you. That's it.
Thank you. Who was that speaking, by the way? Because I'm on a cell phone.
Oh, Johnny Coleman. Johnny Coleman, Johnny C.
Okay, thank you, Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
Dana, if you ask me offline, I'll tell you more, but I'll save that for you. Feel free to link in, send me a private message. I'll be happy to give you some more insight.
Would love that. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, I think if no one else has anything to add, let's come into our final little session here. I think, Peter, is it door prize time?
Yeah, it's mine, my personal. No, it's not mine, but it's my time to do it. It's the organization Blacks in Technology. So let me see if I can share my screen again here. All the votes are in. So I was multitasking along the way. And so I will let Dwayne make the administrative choice of, do you have to be present to win? Dwayne, yes or no?
Have to be present to win? Yes, so I'll say yes.
He dropped off because it was 39 a minute ago and now it's 33. Hey, so this is the sealed envelope. I'm unsealing it. And the accountants have put in 4 numbers here. So we got 4 here, and I'm just going to randomly pick one because I'm not trying to make anybody win or not win. 91.
Oh,
And
wow.
this is not 16. I remember writing it. It's 91. So that would look like Ray Jarvis. And just to show you, the others are different numbers. So that would be slick if he just had them all the same number, but they're all different numbers. But anyways, Ray Jarvis, are you still here? Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. All right. So your choice of either the Bluetooth speakers or the weight scale. You can either privately let me know, or you can let everybody know now. You can
Bluetooth speakers work for me.
Okay. And I'll need your contact information. You can, again, privately message me through the chat line with your contact information some kind of way.
Okay, I'll do that now.
That way too. And so awesome. That was that piece. And we do have the networking if anyone wanted to stay around for networking. And sometimes we have found that people say, put me in Blaire's room. I need to hear from her, or Orlando, because another tip would be work with 2 talented professionals. However you can work with them, I think that's a secret. So Dwayne, I was going to open up the networking rooms. People can drop off when they want to drop off. I know some are from the East Coast here, so it's pretty late. But we'll do that for another 30 minutes or so. And typically, we've left it open for as long as people are having productive conversations, because it'll slip into something else after a while, you know. So
Yeah, that's fabulous. Everyone, thank you so much for participating. Only thing next for us is August 11th. A few of managers and Blacks in Tech are participating in a career seeking advice event. You know, for during this COVID time and new normals, as we say, we're still giving out specific advice where we can. So, you know, stay tuned for that August 11th. And we have a scholarship for software quality, a partner of ours. And again, thanks so much everyone for your time, and look forward to the online discussions in social media, and enjoy that networking. Take care.
righty.
Perfect.
Thank you.